Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Aurora's edge, watching the stars drift past the main window. The ship had been traveling through deep space for 3 months now, mapping new systems and looking for signs of life. It was quiet work, but Jake liked it that way. His crew of 12 was small but skilled, and they worked well together. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," said Lisa Carter from her communications station. She was young but had good instincts. Her fingers moved quickly over the control panel as she tried to make sense of the signals. Jake walked over to look at her screen. "What kind of strange?" "Energy readings that don't match anything in our database. They're coming from about 2 million kilometers away near that asteroid field we mapped yesterday." Danny Walsh, the chief engineer, looked up from his repair work. "Could be natural. Space does weird things sometimes." "Maybe," Lisa said, but she didn't sound convinced. "The patterns are too regular, too organized." Jake studied the readings for a moment. In his 15 years of space travel, he had learned to trust his crew when they said something felt wrong. "Set course for those coordinates. Let's take a closer look." The Aurora's edge changed direction smoothly. It was a good ship built for long exploration missions. Jake had been its captain for 5 years, and he knew every sound it made, every vibration in the deck plates. 20 minutes later, they found the source of the signals. "Holy cow," whispered Steve Harrison, the pilot. "Captain, you need to see this." On the main screen was a ship unlike anything they had ever seen. It was huge, at least 3 times the size of the Aurora's edge. Its hull was dark green with strange markings carved into the metal. Spikes jutted out from various points, giving it a menacing appearance. "It's definitely not human," said Claire Murphy, the navigator. She was usually calm, but Jake could hear tension in her voice. "Any response to our greeting signals?" Jake asked Lisa. "Nothing yet. But Captain, I'm detecting more energy buildup." "They're charging weapons." Jake felt his stomach tighten. First contact with an alien species was supposed to be handled by diplomatic teams, not a small exploration ship. "Shields up, but don't charge our weapons yet. We don't want to seem hostile." The alien ship moved closer. It was slow but deliberate, like a predator stalking prey. Jake could see smaller ships detaching from the main vessel. "3 smaller craft heading our way," reported Amanda Brooks from the security station. She was a former military officer who had joined the exploration service for a quieter life. Now she looked like she wished she had stayed in the army. "Should we run, Captain?" asked Tony Rodriguez from the engine room over the communication system. Jake considered it. The Aurora's edge was fast, but the alien ships might be faster, and running might make them look weak or guilty of something. "Not yet. Let's see what they want." The alien ships surrounded them in a triangle formation. They were sleek and dangerous looking, with weapon ports clearly visible along their sides. "Incoming transmission," Lisa announced. "Put it on screen." The face that appeared on the main display made several crew members step back. It was reptilian, with yellow eyes and scales that shifted from green to brown. When it spoke, its voice was deep and harsh. "Human vessel, you will surrender immediately. Prepare to be boarded." Jake stepped forward. "This is Captain Morrison of the exploration ship Aurora's Edge. We're on a peaceful mission. We mean no harm." The alien's mouth opened, showing rows of sharp teeth in what might have been a smile. "Harm? You will learn about harm soon enough. I am Commander Zthar of the Vorthok Empire. Your species is unknown to us, but that will change quickly. We're explorers, not soldiers. Surely we can talk about this." "Talk?" Zthar made a sound that could have been laughter. "There's nothing to discuss. You will surrender or you will be destroyed. Those are your only choices." The transmission ended. Jake looked around at his crew. They were scared, but they were holding together. These were good people who had signed up to explore the galaxy, not fight wars. "Captain," Amanda said quietly, "our shields won't hold against 3 ships that size." "I know." Jake sat down in his captain's chair and tried to think. Everything he had read about first contact situations said to avoid violence if possible. But what do you do when the aliens don't want to talk? They're moving closer, Steve reported. I think they're going to try to dock with us. Sir, said Carl Peterson, the ship's doctor and scientist, maybe we should consider surrendering. If they wanted to destroy us, they probably would have done it already. Jake nodded slowly. The doctor was right. The aliens seemed to want them alive for some reason. Lisa, open a channel to the lead ship. Channel open, sir. Commander Zthar, we surrender. But I'm asking you to treat my crew with respect. They're civilians. This time the alien definitely smiled. Respect? You will learn what the Vorthak think of respect. Prepare to receive our boarding party. And human captain, do not try anything foolish. My people are experts at dealing with new species. The transmission ended again. Jake turned to his crew. Listen, everyone, we don't know what they want, but we're going to get through this. Stay calm, follow their orders, and don't give them any reason to hurt you. Through the main window, they could see the alien boarding ship approaching. It looked like a metallic insect, all sharp angles and weapon ports. Here they come, Amanda said. Jake stood up and straightened his uniform. Whatever happened next, he would face it as the captain of this ship. His crew was depending on him, and he wouldn't let them down. The sound of the docking clamps engaging echoed through the ship. The aliens were aboard. The airlock door opened with a hiss, and the first alien stepped onto the Aurora's edge. It was even more frightening in person than on the screen. The creature stood nearly 7 feet tall, covered in dark green scales that seemed to shift color in the light. Its yellow eyes swept over the human crew like it was examining insects. Behind the first alien came 4 more, all carrying strange weapons that hummed with energy. They moved with the confidence of predators who had done this many times before. I am Sub-Commander Krexith, the lead alien announced. Its voice was like gravel being crushed. You will all move to the main corridor and wait there. Anyone who tries to run will be killed. Jake Morrison kept his hands visible and spoke calmly. We understand. Everyone, move slowly to the main corridor. The 12 crew members of the Aurora's Edge walked carefully down the hallway with the aliens following behind them. Jake could hear his people breathing heavily, but they were keeping it together. Amanda Brooks stayed close to the younger crew members while Danny Walsh kept looking back at the aliens with curious eyes instead of fear. Stop here, Krex ordered when they reached the widest part of the corridor. The humans formed a loose group, facing the aliens. Jake noticed that Tony Rodriguez was actually looking more annoyed than scared. The mechanic had grease stains on his uniform and looked like he had been interrupted in the middle of important work. Now, Krex said, you will learn why the Vorthak Empire rules over dozens of worlds. You will understand true fear. The alien reached for a device on its belt. It was about the size of a human flashlight, but it had several small tubes sticking out of one end. The other aliens also pulled out similar devices. What are those? Asked Helen Price, the tech specialist. These, Krexith said with obvious pride, are terror dispensers. They contain a chemical compound that will fill your minds with fear like you have never experienced. Most species surrender immediately when they breathe it. Others go insane from terror. Lisa Carter moved closer to Captain Morrison. Captain, what do we do? Nothing we can do right now, Jake said quietly. Just stay calm. Krexith held up the device. This gas has worked on every species we have encountered. The Zephyrians lasted only seconds before they begged for mercy. The proud metallic confederation. Warriors became like frightened children. Even the savage Bloodclaw clans cowered in terror. The alien pressed a button on the device. A soft hissing sound filled the corridor, and purple mist began pouring out of the tubes. The other aliens activated their devices too, and soon the air was thick with the strange fog. Breathe deeply, humans, Krexith said with satisfaction. Let the terror fill your lungs and your minds. The crew of the Aurora's Edge had no choice but to breathe the purple mist. It had a strong chemical smell, sharp and bitter. Jake felt it burn slightly in his nose and throat. He waited for the fear to hit him. He had read about chemical weapons that could affect the brain, make people panic or hallucinate. He prepared himself for the worst. But nothing happened. Jake looked around at his crew. They were all breathing the purple gas, but nobody looked terrified. In fact, Tony Rodriguez was sniffing the air with a puzzled expression. "Hey," Tony said. "This smells familiar." The aliens stared at him. Krexth moved closer, confusion clear on his scaled face. "What did you say?" Tony took another deep breath of the purple mist. "Yeah, this definitely smells familiar. Kind of like my uncle's garage back in Detroit. You know, where he used to work on cars? Always smelled like motor oil, paint thinner, and some kind of chemical cleaner." Danny Walsh nodded in agreement. "Oh yeah, I know that smell. Reminds me of the factory district where I grew up. My dad worked at the chemical plant there." "Are you serious?" asked Claire Murphy. "I was trying to figure out what it reminded me of. It's like that smell near the old industrial park back home. Kind of nostalgic, actually." The aliens looked at each other with growing alarm. Krexth pressed the button on his device again, releasing more purple mist. "This is impossible," he said. "The terror compound should be affecting your nervous systems by now. You should be screaming." Gary Coleman, one of the engineers, scratched his head. "Sorry to disappoint you, but this just smells like work to me. Reminds me of the shipyard where I did my training. Good times." Amanda Brooks was trying not to smile. "It does smell like home in a weird way. Remember when we were kids and our neighborhoods always had that chemical smell in the air? From all the factories and plants?" "This can't be happening," Krexth muttered. He turned to the other aliens. "Increase the concentration. Use all dispensers at maximum power." The aliens activated their devices again. The purple mist became so thick that the humans could barely see each other. The chemical smell grew stronger. Maria Santos, the communications technician, actually laughed. "Oh wow, now it really smells like Friday nights in the industrial district. My friends and I used to hang out near the factories because nobody bothered us there." "And Saturday mornings at the junkyard," added Pete Johnson from maintenance. "My grandpa used to take me there to look for car parts. Always smelled just like this." Dr. Carl Peterson was examining the mist with scientific interest. "Fascinating. The chemical composition seems similar to industrial solvents we use on Earth. No wonder it smells familiar." Krexth was backing away from the humans now. "This is not possible. The terror compound works on every known species. It triggers the deepest fears in any living brain." Captain Morrison stepped forward through the purple fog. "Maybe that's your problem. You assumed we'd be afraid of the same things that scare other species. But the chemical directly affects the fear centers of the brain," Krexth protested. "Maybe," said Steve Harrison, the pilot. "But what if our fear centers are different? What if we're used to scary smells and dangerous chemicals?" Tony Rodriguez was still sniffing the air appreciatively. "You know what this needs? A little bit of that sulfur smell from the old paper mill. Then it would smell exactly like home." The other humans were starting to relax completely. Some were even smiling as they remembered their childhoods around industrial areas. "I don't understand," Krexth said weakly. "You should be terrified. You should be begging us to make it stop." Helen Price shrugged. "Sorry, but we grew up with smells like this. Our whole planet had factories and chemical plants everywhere for hundreds of years. This is just normal." The aliens were now the ones who looked scared. They had never encountered a species that was completely immune to their most powerful psychological weapon. "What are you?" Krexth whispered. "We're humans," Jake said simply. "And apparently, we're harder to scare than you thought." The purple mist slowly began to clear from the corridor. The Vorthak aliens stood frozen, staring at the human crew who were chatting casually about childhood memories. Sub-Commander Krexth looked like he had seen a ghost. "This cannot be real," he muttered to himself. "The terror compound has never failed before. Never." Dr. Carl Peterson stepped forward, adjusting his glasses. He was the ship's scientist and had been studying the aliens with fascination instead of fear. "If you don't mind me asking," Carl said politely, "what exactly is in that chemical you just sprayed on us?" Krexth stared at him. "You want to know about the terror compound, while it is still affecting you?" "Well, it's not really affecting us," Carl explained. "So I'm curious about the science behind it." The alien looked confused but answered anyway. It contains concentrated fear pheromones from 12 different species, mixed with neural inhibitors and panic-inducing synthetic compounds. Carl nodded, thoughtfully. Interesting. And what's the delivery method? Some kind of aerosol suspension? Chemical vapor mixed with psychoactive particles that enter through the respiratory system, Krexith said automatically, then caught himself. Why are you not afraid? Why are you asking questions like a scientist instead of screaming? Because I am a scientist, Carl said with a smile. And this is fascinating. You see, humans have a very unusual evolutionary history compared to most species. Captain Morrison watched as his ship's doctor began what looked like an impromptu lecture. Sometimes Carl got so excited about learning new things that he forgot they were in a dangerous situation. Go on, Doc, Jake said. I think our new friends need to understand something about us. Carl cleared his throat. Well, you see, most intelligent species evolved on planets with relatively clean environments. They developed in harmony with nature, with clear air and pure water. The other Vorthak aliens had moved closer to listen. Even though they were supposed to be the captors, they seemed genuinely curious about why their ultimate weapon had failed. Humans are different, Carl continued. Our planet went through something called the Industrial Revolution about 300 years ago. For over 2 centuries, we burned fossil fuels, built factories, and filled our air with chemicals. Tony Rodriguez nodded. My great-grandfather used to tell stories about the old days. Said you could see the smog hanging over cities like a brown blanket. Exactly, Carl said. By the year 2000, most human cities had air pollution so bad that children developed breathing problems just from living there. We had acid rain, chemical spills, and toxic waste everywhere. Danny Walsh chimed in. My hometown was built around a steel mill. The air always tasted like metal and sulfur. We just got used to it. Krexth was listening intently now. But surely this harmed your species, made you weak? You'd think so, Carl said. But humans are incredibly adaptable. Instead of dying out, we evolved to handle toxic environments. Our lungs got stronger, our immune systems tougher. We learned to live with chemicals that would kill other species. Steve Harrison laughed. My mom used to send me outside to play even when the air quality warnings were in the red zone. She said fresh air was good for kids even if it wasn't actually fresh. This is impossible, said one of the other aliens. No species can adapt to poison. We didn't just adapt to it, Claire Murphy said. We got nostalgic about it. Some of my best childhood memories are of summer evenings when you could see the orange glow from the refineries on the horizon. Carl was getting more excited as he explained. You see, what you consider a terror weapon, we consider the smell of home. Your fear gas contains many of the same compounds that humans lived with for generations. He pointed to the lingering purple mist. Industrial solvents, petroleum byproducts, synthetic chemicals. To you, these trigger fear responses. To us, they trigger memories of family, community, and home. Maria Santos smiled. Every time I smell something like that gas of yours, I think of my grandmother's neighborhood, right next to 3 different factories, and she lived there for 60 years. Happiest woman I ever knew. Krexith was backing away slowly. You're saying your entire species is immune to chemical fear weapons. Not just immune, Gary Coleman said cheerfully. We actually kind of like them. They make us feel comfortable. Pete Johnson nodded. It's like when you smell your mom's cooking and it reminds you of being a kid. Except for us, it's the smell of industrial waste. The aliens were whispering to each other in their own language now. They sounded panicked. But this means, Krexith said slowly, that our primary weapon is useless against your species. Looks that way, Captain Morrison said. But that doesn't mean we want to fight you. We're explorers, not warriors. One of the other aliens spoke up. Sub-Commander, we must report this to Commander Zthar immediately. If the terror compound doesn't work on humans, then our entire strategy needs to change. Carl was still fascinated by the science. Can I ask how this chemical affects other species? I mean, specifically, what kind of fear responses does it trigger? Pure terror, Krexith said quietly. Most species see visions of their worst nightmares. They experience panic so intense that they cannot think or move. Some die from fear alone. Wow, said Helen Price. And all we got was nostalgia for the good old days. Amanda Brooks was trying not to laugh. I hate to break it to you, but if you really want to scare humans, you'd need to do something like threaten to take away our coffee or cancel our favorite TV shows. Or make us sit through a boring meeting, added Lisa Carter. The aliens looked at each other with growing concern. Their entire military doctrine was based on fear, and they had just discovered a species that was completely immune to it. What do we do now? One of them asked Krext. The sub-commander looked at the relaxed, friendly faces of the human crew. They weren't acting like prisoners at all. They were acting like they were having an interesting conversation with new neighbors. I don't know, he admitted. This has never happened before. Sub-Commander Krext activated his communication device with shaking hands. The small screen flickered to life, showing the angry face of Commander Zthar aboard the main Vorthak vessel. Report, Krext. Have the humans surrendered? Commander, we have a problem. A big problem. Zthar's yellow eyes narrowed. What kind of problem? Did they resist? Fight back? No, sir. Worse than that. The terror compound doesn't work on them. There was a long silence. Then Zthar's voice became dangerously quiet. What do you mean it doesn't work? I mean they breathed it in and said it smelled like home, sir. They're completely immune. The communication screen went dark for a moment. When it came back on, Zthar looked furious. That's impossible. The terror compound works on every species in the galaxy. Not on humans, sir. They actually seem to enjoy it. Captain Morrison stepped forward. Commander Zthar, if I may speak. You will be silent, human. Actually, Jake said calmly, I think you need to hear this. Your weapon failed because you don't understand what humans are afraid of. Lies. The terror compound creates fear in all living things. Dr. Carl Peterson adjusted his glasses. Commander, fear is learned behavior. What scares one species might be comforting to another. Your chemical works on species that evolved in clean environments. We didn't. Zthar stared at the human doctor through the screen. You're saying your species is fearless? Oh no, said Tony Rodriguez with a laugh. We're afraid of plenty of things, just not chemical smells. Then what does frighten you? Zthar demanded. The humans looked at each other. Amanda Brooks spoke first. Losing people we care about. Running out of coffee, added Steve Harrison. Having to use Internet Explorer, said Lisa Carter, which made several crew members shudder. Being stuck in traffic when you really need to. Use the bathroom, contributed Claire Murphy. Zthar looked more confused than ever. These things make no sense as weapons. That's our point, Captain Morrison said. Fear is personal. Your terror gas might work on other species, but it just makes us homesick. The Vorthak commander's face disappeared from the screen. Krext looked at his fellow aliens, who were whispering nervously among themselves. What are your orders, Sub-Commander? One of them asked. I don't know. This has never happened before. Meanwhile, Gary Coleman and Helen Price had been quietly examining the alien terror dispensers that were still lying on the floor, where the Vorthak had dropped them. Hey, Doc, Gary called to Carl Peterson. You might want to look at this. Carl walked over and knelt down beside the alien devices. What did you find? Well, Helen ran some quick tests with her scanner. The chemical composition of their fear gas is really similar to the industrial solvent we use to clean engine parts. Helen nodded. Actually, it's almost identical to the stuff we use in the machine shop, just more concentrated. Danny Walsh joined them. Are you saying their ultimate weapon is basically industrial cleaning fluid? Pretty much, Gary said, with some extra stuff added to make it smell worse. The Vorthak aliens were listening to this conversation with growing alarm. That's not possible, Krext said. The terror compound is a sophisticated psychological weapon developed over centuries. Maybe, said Helen. But to us it's just really strong cleaning solution. Carl was getting excited again. This is fascinating from a scientific perspective. You've created a weapon that targets specific neural pathways associated with environmental threats. But humans have spent generations building up resistance to exactly these kinds of chemicals. Tony Rodriguez picked up one of the alien dispensers and examined it. You know what's funny? This thing looks just like the spray bottles we use to degrease engines. Same basic design. Don't touch that, Krex said quickly. Why not? It's empty now, right? Tony pressed a button on the device. A few drops of purple liquid came out. Yep, just like our degreaser. Smells better, though. The Vorthak aliens were backing away from the humans now. For the first time since boarding the ship, they looked genuinely frightened. Sub-Commander, one of them whispered. These humans are not normal. They're treating our most powerful weapon like a household cleaning product. I can hear you, Amanda Brooks said with amusement. And you're right. We're probably not normal by galactic standards. Krexith's communication device beeped again. Commander Zthkar's face appeared, looking even angrier than before. Krexith, I'm sending additional boarding parties with stronger weapons. If the terror compound doesn't work, we'll try other fear tactics. What kind of other tactics, sir? Holographic, projections of terrifying creatures, sonic weapons that cause panic. And if those fail, we have concentrated versions of the terror compound that are 50 times stronger. The humans looked at each other and started to smile. Oh boy, said Pete Johnson. 50 times stronger cleaning solution? That'll really smell like the old days. I wonder if the holographic monsters will look like the creatures from those old horror movies, mused Maria Santos. Those were fun. And sonic weapons? Gary Coleman grinned. Sounds like a rock concert. I love loud music. Zthar could hear the humans talking in the background. What are they saying? Why do they sound happy? Krexith looked at the relaxed, cheerful faces of the human crew. Commander, I think we may have made a mistake. These humans aren't afraid of anything we can do to them. Nonsense. Every species has fears. We just need to find the right approach. Captain Morrison stepped closer to the communication screen. Commander Zthar, can I make a suggestion? What? Instead of trying to scare us, why don't we just talk? We're not your enemies. We're explorers. Maybe we can help each other. Help? Zthkar's laugh was bitter. The Vorthak Empire doesn't need help from anyone. Are you sure about that? Jake asked quietly. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like your entire military strategy just fell apart. The screen went dark. The aliens in the corridor looked at each other with uncertainty. What do we do now? One of them asked. Before Krexith could answer, alarms started blaring throughout the ship. The Vorthak reinforcements were arriving, and they were bringing bigger weapons. The docking bay doors of the Aurora's Edge opened again, and 6 more Vorthak soldiers marched in. These aliens carried larger weapons and wore heavier armor. Their leader was bigger than the others, with darker scales and more scars. I am War Commander Thekvor, the new arrival announced. Sub-Commander Krexith, explain this failure immediately. Krexith gestured helplessly at the human crew, who were still standing around looking relaxed and curious. The terror compound had no effect on them, War Commander. They said it reminded them of home. Impossible. Thekvor studied the humans with cold yellow eyes. Every species fears the terror compound. Stand back. The new Vorthak soldiers activated devices that projected holographic images into the corridor. Suddenly the air filled with terrifying creatures. Giant spiders with dripping fangs, monsters with too many teeth, shadowy figures with glowing red eyes. The humans looked around at the holograms with interest. Oh, cool, said Lisa Carter. These look just like the monsters from those old movies my dad used to watch. The spider one is pretty good, agreed Steve Harrison. Nice detail work on the fangs. Is that supposed to be a demon? Asked Helen Price, pointing at one of the shadowy figures. Because it looks more like my cousin Jerry when he hasn't had his morning coffee. Thekvor's jaw dropped. You're not afraid of the terror projections? Should we be? Asked Captain Morrison. They're just holograms, pretty good quality though. What's the resolution on your projectors? The War Commander quickly shut off the holographic display and activated another device. A high-pitched whining sound filled the corridor, designed to cause panic and confusion in most species. The humans winced slightly at the noise. "Okay, that's a bit annoying," said Danny Walsh, covering his ears. "Sounds like the fire alarm at my old apartment," added Tony Rodriguez. "Used to go off every time someone burned toast." "Could you turn that down?" asked Amanda Brooks politely. "It's hurting my ears, but it's not really scary. Just loud." Thekfor turned off the sonic weapon, looking increasingly desperate. "Krexith, bring out the concentrated terror compound. Maximum strength." "Sir, are you sure? That concentration is dangerous even to us." "Do it." Krexith reluctantly pulled out a larger device. This one had warning symbols all over it and required both hands to operate. Purple mist began pouring out, much thicker and darker than before. The chemical smell was so strong that even the Vorthak soldiers had to step back and put on breathing masks. The humans breathed in the super-concentrated fear gas and waited. "Oh, wow," said Gary Coleman after a moment. "Now that really smells like the old industrial district. Takes me back to when I was 12. It's like someone mixed paint thinner, motor oil, and that stuff they used at the tire factory," said Pete Johnson happily. "Brings back memories." Dr. Carl Peterson was taking deep breaths and smiling. "This is remarkable. The concentration is at least 50 times stronger, but it's still just triggering nostalgic responses." Maria Santos actually looked emotional. "This smells exactly like my neighborhood when I was growing up. My mom used to hang laundry outside even when the chemical plant was running. She said the clothes dried faster in the warm air." The Vorthak soldiers were backing away in fear now. Not fear of the humans, but fear of failure. Their entire military system was based on terror, and these strange creatures were immune to everything they had. Thekfor's voice was shaking. "This cannot be happening. Fear is the foundation of all power." Captain Morrison stepped through the purple mist toward the alien commander. "Maybe that's your problem right there." "What do you mean?" "You've built your whole civilization on fear. But fear isn't the only way to get things done." Dr. Peterson joined the conversation. "Commander, can I ask you something? What are the Vorthak afraid of?" "We fear nothing," Thekavor said quickly, but his voice betrayed him. "Everyone's afraid of something," said Amanda Brooks gently. "What scares your people?" The alien commander looked around at his soldiers, then back at the humans. Finally, he spoke in a quiet voice. "We fear being weak, being helpless, not being in control. And that's why you use fear as a weapon," Carl realized. "You're trying to make others feel the way you're afraid of feeling." "But Commander," said Claire Murphy, "don't you see? By depending on fear, you've made yourself weak. What happens when you meet someone who isn't afraid?" Thekfor looked at the confident, friendly faces of the human crew. "You're not afraid of us at all, are you?" "Not really," Jake admitted. "You seem pretty scared of us, though." "We are not scared." "You're standing as far away from us as possible," observed Tony Rodriguez. "And you keep backing up every time we move. And your voice is shaking," added Lisa Carter. The war commander straightened his armor and tried to look threatening again. "We have weapons, ships, an entire fleet." "So do lots of people," said Danny Walsh. "But that doesn't mean you have to fight everybody you meet." Gary Coleman had been examining the super-concentrated terror dispenser. "Hey, Commander, this chemical you've been using? It would make an excellent industrial solvent. You could probably sell it to manufacturing companies instead of using it as a weapon." "Sell it?" "Sure. One species' fear gas is another species' cleaning fluid. You could make a fortune." Helen Price nodded. "And these terror dispensers would work great as spray bottles for factory cleaning. Much better design than what we use." Thekfor looked confused. "You want to buy our weapons?" "Not as weapons," explained Captain Morrison. "As tools. We could trade with you, share technology, learn from each other. But we are conquerors. We rule through fear. How's that working out for you right now?" asked Steve Harrison with a smile. The alien commander was quiet for a long moment. Then he sat down heavily on the deck, looking exhausted. For 300 years, the Vorthak have conquered worlds through terror. But what do we do when terror doesn't work? You try something new, said Carl Peterson gently. You learn, you adapt, you make friends instead of enemies. Krexith stepped forward. War Commander, perhaps the humans are right. Maybe there is another way. Pete Johnson sat down next to the alien commander. You know, fear might seem like power, but it's really just another kind of weakness. Real strength comes from working together. Maria Santos joined them on the floor. Besides, conquering is exhausting. Trading is much more fun. You get to meet new people and learn new things. Soon most of the humans and several of the Vorthak soldiers were sitting in a circle in the corridor, still surrounded by purple mist that smelled like home to the humans and failure to the aliens. So, said Captain Morrison, instead of trying to scare each other, why don't we figure out how to help each other? Thegfor looked around at the strange scene, humans and Vorthak sitting together, talking peacefully while breathing what was supposed to be the most terrifying weapon in the galaxy. You really think this could work? He asked. Only one way to find out, Jake said with a smile. And for the first time in 300 years, a Vorthak war commander smiled back.